Okay, welcome everybody to episode 21 of MSP Business Schools. Today, as always, I have Brian Doyle here with us. I
Hey
have Tim
guys.
McNeil. I'm Rob Rogers, and today we have a special guest. We have Todd with Brightwire. How you doing, Todd?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. How's everything out in your neck of the woods out there?
Well, I don't know. I mean, it's we're doing okay. We're in Olympia, Washington, so it's relatively peaceful in this area, but we're right between Portland and Seattle. So if we want to mix it up a little bit, I suppose we could take a road trip or something, but I'm pretty much staying home, staying out of trouble.
All right. Okay. So, Todd, I just kind of wanted to go through your business a little bit. If you could give me just a little bit about your business and how you got to where you are today. Tell us, what brings you to this level of your business now?
Well, we talked about that a little bit earlier. We started in 2005. My partner, Gordon Carlisle, and I actually met kind of through our wives. We didn't even know each other. But we ended up forming Brightwire, and about the first 5 years, it was just the two of us, working out of home offices, kind of like we are these days. And, we grew the company just through, kind of brute force and, referrals and a few lucky breaks here and there. That worked great for about 5 years. And then we actually got so busy that we couldn't really add any more clients. So we sort of made the decision to start hiring staff. We had started with a peer group at that time. So this is about 2010, early 2010. And that, we've been involved in peer groups ever since, which is, I think critically important.
So Todd, real quick. So when you were in phase one of your business, just you guys, you joined a peer group at that point?
I had done Heartland HTG online for a couple of years.
Oh yeah, yep.
And then we ended up doing Taylor Business in late 2009, early 2010. And we also had gotten to the point in growth where we couldn't do it anymore by ourselves. So we ended up hiring an admin, our first tech, got some office space. And so we kind of went the next 5 years in that mode. I think we got to about, 8 or 10 people within the next 5 years.
Okay.
And like I said, it was kind of every 5 years you can kind of see, a new stage of development in the business in terms of, process and scalability and, keeping your eye on the right numbers. And, at a certain point, everyone was telling us, you can't do owner-led sales anymore. You have to go out, hire a salesperson, develop a process and build out a consistent sales engine where you're getting, consistently getting a predictable amount of new business on a regular basis. Easier said than done, let me tell you. We've been fighting this battle for 4 or 5 years of focused effort and investments. And I think it's starting to pay off now. I feel very confident that, we've got a lot of the pieces in place and we can make fine-tuning adjustments as opposed to wholesale change. So
Todd, what I'd be curious to understand a little bit is, when you talk about coming out of that owner-led sales process, and we talk about that often here on the show, when you came out of it, what were some of the biggest challenges that you found? What are some of the things that you found to be the challenge? Because we hear a number of different reasons why that was a tough transition or didn't succeed, at least in the first couple passes, and love to hear a little bit about your experience.
I think there's a fundamental difference between owner-led sales and salesperson type of sales, in the sense that it starts with lead gen. Typically with owner-led sales, the clients are coming to you in most cases. You may have some marketing, a newsletter or something, but it's a lot more, in a sense, it's a lot more reactive selling. There's a certain amount of credibility and trust that an owner would have with another owner typically. It's a lot more difficult for a salesperson to, sort of get past that perception that they're just trying to sell something to you, when in fact, we're actually trying to help businesses protect themselves and be more efficient with their operations. And, at the end of the day, we say that we know that almost everybody that we talk to actually needs our services. It's just a matter of us, sort of reframing them and sort of showing them that there's a lot of benefit to what we offer them. That's a very difficult process. So you have to have, you have to have some, structure, and you have to have lead gen built in that you didn't have before in a more, what I would call a kind of a reactive sales. When you've got a salesperson, you're holding them to accountability for a certain amount of lead gen, a certain amount of activities, a certain amount of effort, that to a certain degree, it's a little bit of a blind faith that if I do these things will happen.
Right.
And it takes time. It's not, you can't say it's going to take 3 months or 6 months. It should take, somewhere between 6 months and a year, you're going to start seeing results, but that's a long time.
Yeah.
It's a lot of
lot
carry
of
costs.
investment.
Yeah.
So you have to have everything else running well in terms of, what are you charging for your services? You can't run it off of fumes. You've got to have profitability in order to subsidize that salesperson. But once that starts working, if you've got the mathematics down correctly, it's gonna be self-sustaining. It's going, if you can pay somebody $1 to make $2, you do that all day long. Well, yeah.
Now, you touched upon something really interesting there, and that's that kind of concept of the owner-led sales. There's a different trust factor, right? You think about the banks, everybody's a VP to try to give that executive to executive contact, right? So, I really appreciate you bringing that out and forward, because I think that's one of the biggest things that I experience is how do you get somebody else to kind of build that instant trust that kind of happens when an owner shows up in front of another owner, right? There's already that little kumbaya. We're in the same plate together, at least in some fashion.
No.
Yeah, I mean, you need to find somebody that has confidence, that is persistent, but is not coming across as, desperate or pushy to, sell some sort of a product or service. And I think we definitely emphasize selling services over products. I mean, we're pretty product agnostic in that regard. We don't sell anything to anybody that's not actually a client. So there's no hardware, software sales involved. It's really solution selling. It's, making somebody's business more consistent in a way that we can actually support them. So that's sort of the sales operations side. All of these things are interconnected. And when everything's working properly, if you have a well-run sales engine system, you've got to have service and delivery that can respond to that. And you also have to have a good HR hiring process, because, eventually you're going to start outselling your service team. So it all goes together. You have to have a good company culture. You have to have, basically all cylinders firing in conjunction. It is sort of an engine that it's a component of an engine, and the entire company is like this complex operation that there's a lot of dependencies that if one side isn't working right, it's going to cause problems. So it definitely is a complex problem or set of challenges you have to work on. And you can only do that if you've got a good team of people.
Right. Well, so you had talked about how, every 5 years you've kind of transformed your company, and you've got the sales engine going now. It's probably your sales process. Rob and I just happen to know it's one of the more effective sales. I would say one of the more mature sales processes that we've seen, and that's true. That's not BS. But when was the tipping point for you? Like when we had talked a little before about some large clients coming and going. You're talking just before the recording about some large clients coming and going, but what was the driving force that made you, for lack of a better term, just put your big boy pants on and get after it?
I don't know if there's a single instance. I think it had a lot to do with our peer group. We had gotten to the point where we had all of the financial numbers dialed in for years and years and years, very consistent financial performance in the company. And it's kind of like we were growing even without an effective sales engine, probably about 20% year over year. We'd have a flat year here, and then we'd make it up, and then we'd have another flat year and make it up. And part of it was just being part of that peer group. And our mentor was like, if you want to get to the next level, you're not going to get there unless you have an effective sales engine in place. It's just not sustainable to have, an owner-led sales type thing, because you've got so many other things you have to deal with. Part of it was a recognition that as we we're growing the company, suddenly we've got more staff, we've got more clients in the community, and there's a certain realization at a certain point in time when you actually realize, man, I have a lot of responsibility. We're responsible to our team, we're responsible to our community, we're responsible to our clients. And at a certain point, it's like, you can't stop, you have to keep going. If you're not growing, you're dying, right?
Yep.
Eventually you're going to lose an account here. I mean, we lose accounts, most often it's because of a merger or acquisition. I mean, I'd say 90% of our client attrition is, just a merger or acquisition. Every once in a while, something goes south and we lose a client, but it's very, very rare. But if you're not growing, then eventually those mergers and acquisitions are going to start eating into your ability to fulfill your responsibilities to a bunch of different people. I mean, sometimes I talk about, we probably support close to 2,500 employees across our client base, which if we were a, mid-enterprise level company, that's a lot of revenue, a lot of livelihoods.
Yeah.
We're not completely responsible for everything in their operation, but, as we know, IT services can and should be a pretty important piece of any business operation. And that's kind of the level of our responsibility is, I don't know, there's 2,500 people that we directly support, and that's got to be like close to 10,000 people in our community that, the jobs that we're supporting through technology and efficiency and, security protections and all the types of things that we deal with, that starts to weigh on you and you go, wow, this is got to take this kind of seriously, right?
Yeah, right. Is COVID affecting you guys at all? Is there any like downturn or shrinkage because of COVID?
I know not for us. I mean, it's definitely changed our operations. We went from, 100% office. We have 2 remote workers already, 100% remote, but now we're for a month or 2, we were 100% remote for everybody. So that was about 18, 19 people that were working remote 100% of the time. So there's some stress there. We probably rolled out about 200 client employees that weren't working remotely, and that was about a 3-week scramble to get that done. And then really we had a bunch of projects that were queued up that we're now starting to work on. So we are very fortunate. We've only had 2 or 3 clients that were impacted by COVID directly, fortunately, and none of them have left. They've just sort of downsized their operations a little bit, and we're busier than ever.
Wow.
We had revamped our sales process and everything during this whole time, and now we're doing lots of video sales calls. We're starting to do some on-site work, and we have a couple, maybe 2 or 3 people going in and out of the office, on a daily basis, doing package deliveries or, that kind of stuff. But we are lucky that we're super busy. And I think a lot of it honestly has to do with the fact that we are, a full-fledged managed services company. Every single account we have is on a contract. I know through the channel that a lot of people that were break-fix or still break-fix have struggled because it's a lot easier to not pick up the phone when there's no contract, and it's like, oh, well, we can save some money by not calling Joe or whatever.
Not this month. Yep.
Yeah, it's a different relationship because when you sign a contract with a company, it's like, this is our IT group. And suddenly we need IT support like we've never needed before with remote working and all this. And I think the consensus across most of our colleagues is that they're busier than ever. There's a couple of exceptions, and it's only because of the fact that they had a lot of clients and sectors that were heavily impacted, and so that impacted their operations. But other than that, there's very few people I know that aren't busier than ever.
That's great.
So how have you managed to stay engaged with your clients during COVID, beyond just responding to the service tickets and things like that? But what are the steps you've been taking to really keep that account management level of the relationship going?
I have to say that's been a bit of a struggle. We have regular, we call them SBRs, strategic business reviews. We still do them, but I can tell you it's not as consistent as it had been prior to COVID. But we still do them. It's video call for the most part, like a Teams type of call. Our larger accounts, we meet with them weekly and monthly, depending on the scale of their operations. But thank you for the reminder. Need to start scheduling those out more.
Are those quarterly?
It's the world I live in. Are those, Rob, I think you were saying, are those quarterly? I think you mentioned they're weekly. You've got weekly cadences with some, monthly, quarterly.
Yeah, we've got a couple, one's weekly, 2 or 3 are monthly. And the rest are at least twice a year. They talk about, every account needs a quarterly business review or strategic review. I certainly believe that's true. I think quarterly can be a bit of an overkill for a really small account. But can't hurt.
Yeah.
So, what would you say was your biggest lesson learned in 15 years of running Brightwire? Like, what was that one thing that just shocked you more than anything else during your career, and it could be anything, For me, it was outrunning a hurricane one time. So, those kind of things coming out of my data center, trying to get home before the hurricane hit.
Well, I had run another company, a bootstrap startup in the retail coffee business for 10 years prior to starting Brightwire. So it wasn't the first company that I started. So there wasn't a lot of shock and awe from starting a business. I would say the pace of change in the technology field in general, it's unrelenting. And, it's a fast-paced environment with, a managed IT company. And we really try not to emphasize technology as much because it's really more of a business relationship with clients, and we're helping them improve their businesses, but we're doing it through the efficient deployment and kind of life cycle management of technology. So there's always going to be a technology component, but our clients, if they're doing their jobs properly, are outsourcing to companies like us, and we're the trusted advisor. But what that really means is that they're trusting us to take on a pretty important part of their business operation so that they can kind of focus on what they do best. And I hear that that's not a unique sort of sales proposition in and of itself. A lot of people say that. Actually doing it is very, very difficult.
Yeah.
And it takes a lot of focus. It takes a lot of internal operations improvements on our side to make sure that we're actually doing what we say we're going to do. I think there's a real gap in a range of companies that, we all say the same thing, but are you actually doing what you say you're doing? And so that's an area where, from the sales side, if you can figure out what makes you unique amongst all of the companies that are saying the same thing, that can give you a little bit of an edge in that discussion. And
definitely. Look, I think I'm sure you've seen it being a part of the peer groups over the years, and Rob and I have definitely seen it. Brian, I'm sure you've seen it. Everybody says they want to be a trusted advisor, right? And that's really easy to say, but the act of doing so can be much different than verbalizing that. So,
and what you just defined really tells you that if you play that trusted advisor role, you're not only serving your customer, but you're actually serving your team better too.
Yeah.
Because you become less reactionary to the hot technology the customer just heard about, and now you've got to investigate it, but you're putting forth a strategic plan where you're really, engaging them, letting them know how it's coming, how things are going to roll out, and kind of leading them into what technologies they really need. So you're not as beholden to, that unrelenting pace, as you said. So kudos to you for getting that in place. Do you guys
there's definitely truth in the dealing with the the needs of the team itself, the service team, the sales team. I mean, that I think that's another, definitely a big transition point, to kind of answer Rob's question before, or maybe it was Tim, about what was the big shocker, or no, it was Brian. But really, as your role changes from, being the frontline tech guy to being the owner-led sales guy to being the manager, and all of a sudden, Gordon and I are now, not only are we not doing any of the same things together as much anymore, which is good. He's responsible for a whole different set of things that I am, and I'm responsible for a whole different set of things that he is. Making sure that you're keeping track of what your company needs is pretty important, and that goes to the culture of the company and the staff and the team, and making sure that you're not doing crazy stuff. We get yelled at all the time by the team, like, what are you doing? You can't do that.
Well, what do you see? What do you see as being the kind of the new technology out there? I mean, I think one thing with Teams, especially since COVID has come around, Teams has exploded. But is there anything else out there that you see is kind of up and coming that that's getting a bit of a groundswell to it?
Well, Teams and sort of the video conferencing platforms, definitely, for sure. And touching on that real quick, I mean, that really changed the way, like, we would have never done a sales presentation over a video chat 6 months ago.
I know.
We just would not have done it. What it's allowed us to do, and I was very impressed with the ability for these sort of, cloud infrastructure services to just explode. I mean, they took 30, 40, 50% increase in volume, and for the most part, it was like, whatever, that's cool. Didn't really, there wasn't outages or anything. I know some platforms had some security issues that had to be addressed, and that's to be expected pretty much anytime, but that's been a big change for us. We're starting to see on the client side, in addition to that type of thing, there's definitely embracing just sort of cloud, general cloud technologies is just a much easier conversation to have now. For larger accounts, we're starting to see, co-location infrastructures. That's one of the big projects we're working on right now, to support remote staff. Now, this is actually a client that already had a lot of remote staff capability, but that, there's a lot of new technologies in that back-end infrastructure that are now more affordable for, a 300-person company that, 3 years ago, that would have been absolutely nothing less than an enterprise level account. So a lot of the infrastructure technologies are starting to push down to what we'd call the small business market. And we're seeing more adoption of that. Trying to think, voice over IP, I think is going to be a bigger play just because of the remote office capabilities. Probably, lots of furniture sales too, I guess, right?
Furniture sales and a downturn in commercial real estate, right?
Right.
So we're coming towards the end of our time today. So usually what we do to kind of wrap things up, Todd, is a couple of quick questions. Before we head into the speed round, we always love to hear what you do to try to maintain some level of work-life balance, if that's real, for yourself out there today.
So, well, I'm lucky to live on some property, so I can get up from my desk and walk around. I've got some walking trails. And I've also, worked 5 years at Brightwire from home, and then, combination of 10 years prior to that. So, it is very easy to get sucked into the workday and never leave your desk. But, give yourself, breaks. My wife bought me a Fitbit for our anniversary, so now I'm tracking all my steps and everything. You just have to be disciplined about, breaking your day up. And if obviously if you're self-employed, you're kind of on the clock a lot of times, no matter what, but, make sure you punch out the clock and go home, even if you're already at home.
Right.
Yeah, I agree with
All right, so now we'll close out with the speed round. Rob, you taking that today, or you want me to lead the fray?
You want to do that one?
All right, so we got 5 quick questions, little word association here for you, Todd. First one is text, talk, or Teams?
Teams.
All right. Music, movies, or TV?
Music.
All right. What age do you want to retire?
59.
All right. Mac or Windows?
Both.
All right. And then the final one is, if you could do anything outside of tech, what would that be?
Business consulting, that's my next gig, but that's when I'm 59.
All right. Well, really appreciate you joining us today. Thank you so much.
I had a great time. This was fun.
Awesome. Yeah. So, guys, with that, I don't know if you've got any closing comments.
No, I'm good on my side.
Yeah, just thanks for joining us today, Todd. Yeah. It was definitely good having you on.
Yeah. All right, everyone. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Everyone, well, we want to thank Todd from Brightwire for joining us again today. And we look forward to seeing you next week. You can get this episode up at our website, mspbusinessschool.com, or anywhere you download your podcasts. Everybody have a great week, and we'll see you next week.
All right. Thanks, guys. Talk to you later.